However good you think Dillon Gabriel was on Saturday, he was even better than you think.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lots coming up today. Is this the best Oregon wide receiving core ever? Some thoughts there, other mailbag questions, and I got to get through the rest of the individual standouts because a lot of guys deserve a shout out, including the horde of Duck fans that made a tackle on the 2-point conversion that was almost returned by Ohio State after the botched hold. 1-point game, ends up saving the game. Big moments. But let's start with Dillon Gabriel, who was phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal. Did not turn the football over. 23 of 34, 341, 2 touchdowns. He's doing this against a defense that was billed coming into the season as one of the best in college football. Through the first 5 games, has been statistically as good as they can possibly be, and Gabriel torched them in more ways than one. So, the reason that I'm so high on this Dillon Gabriel performance, even more than you probably are, is Gabriel had about 4 different ways that he controlled or impacted the game in a significant way that if he had not done any of those, Oregon probably loses the football game. And I said on my Friday prediction show that Dillon Gabriel holds the key to beating Ohio State because I think Oregon will be able to run the football, but you won't be able to do it a lot. That turned out to be maybe my sharpest prediction of the week because Oregon ran the football well with Jordan James, but Dillon Gabriel was the driving force of the offense. So, the 4 ways that I'm talking about. Number 1, the explosive passing game. It has been there for Oregon when it's needed to be. It hasn't always been there. You go back to the Idaho game, for instance, game 1 of the season, game 1 with Gabriel and all the new weapons and the offensive line change and everything that was going on back then. It was a lot of dink and dunk stuff. He was 41 of 49. He had 380 and 2 touchdowns. Great numbers, but you kind of left going, I'd like to see the explosive passing game. He brought the explosive pass game. He was 4 for 4 pushing the ball down the field, like way down the field, including a couple of touchdowns, okay? So that's first way. Second way, and these don't necessarily have to be in this order because this was a big topic going into the game. He protected the football. I'd rather him throw a red zone incompletion than a red zone interception. Of course, I wanted him to see Tez Johnson on 4th and goal. No one's perfect at any position for 4 quarters, especially not in that high level of a football game. But Oregon fans were rightly concerned, and I thought Gabriel would figure it out and get it right, and he did. He needed to, and he did. Because when Oregon went down into the red area, not only was he not making turnover-worthy throws, he had some high-level throws. That touchdown to Evan Stewart, that is a big boy throw. That is tight coverage. That is precise timing and ball placement. And his ability to have worked that or to work the turnovers out and then start making high-level plays to where it's not just he's breaking even, but he's actually a plus down in the red area. Again, aside from the one play, really good. So that's the second way. The third way was his manipulation of the pocket. So when you see that Oregon was sacked 0 times, Dillon Gabriel was sacked 0 times in this game. Yes, you start with the offensive line, and I did on my last couple of shows because they were great. Cornelius and Connerly, in particular, were really good against some absolute dynamite NFL caliber edge rushers, and Gabriel was kept upright. But you have to give the quarterback credit as well, and I think Oregon fans did this a lot to Bo Nix last season when we saw kind of on Ducks versus them or heard the coaches discuss how cerebral of a quarterback he is, how much control he has at the line. Dillon Gabriel made some big adjustments in the second half in particular with the offensive line protections and getting them into the right sequences and getting them into situations where he knew where the ball needed to go, where he knew where he needed to slide, where he needed to move himself in the pocket. So yes, 70% of that credit goes to the offensive line. They won their blocks. But you have to give that other 30%. That's an approximation. You can figure out whatever percentages you want. But that's about how I look at it. His ability to control the game from the pocket and not take any sacks, to get rid of the football, which he did one time in particular. It was sometime in the first half. I forget the exact sequence, but pressure in his face doesn't create a turnover-worthy play, doesn't force it. He lives to fight another down. And what did I say about him going into the game? His mindset needs to be make the right play. And he made the right play over and over and over. And his execution in big moments, pushing it down the field, was really, really good. And then the fourth way is he used his legs in a crucial situation. I thought going into this game, might see a little more quarterback run from these teams than we've seen all year. And Dillon Gabriel against Oregon State had the big option run. But that moment to score the touchdown and take the lead late in the game, that's all Dillon Gabriel. That's making the right reads. So pushing the ball down the field, being better in the red zone, manipulating the pocket, and then using his legs at a crucial moment, that is the best game Dillon Gabriel could have possibly played. I really don't know. You're like, yeah, one bad play. Guess what? Everybody had one bad play in that game. Every single individual at any position, you can find a bad rep. You can find a bad snap, bad play, bad sequence, whatever. Will Howard was really good. And I heard Jay Stevens of Locked On Buckeyes talking about this over on his show, saying that Will Howard, yeah, okay, he mishandled a snap. He didn't realize how much time was left, and he made one bad throw. But Will Howard was really good. And guess what? He was. And if you went to Bo Nix's biggest games in the last few years, particularly in close ones, you can go to a couple moments where it's like, Bo, you'd like to have that read back. Hey, Bo, on fourth down here against Washington down the red, this guy was open over here, wide open for a touchdown, and you threw it over there. Okay? It's going to happen. That's football. But Dillon Gabriel played a phenomenally good football game. He's back inside the top 5 of the Heisman race. He's got the second best odds right now. The issue, look, if he plays like that every single week, yeah, he can go be a Heisman Trophy finalist. That moment, though, was a narrative shifter. And it was an attention grabber. Over 10 million people were watching that football game. You think over 10 million people are watching when Oregon plays Purdue, who are apparently starting a true freshman quarterback? I'll talk more about the Boilermakers as the week goes on. They're starting a freshman at quarterback this week. You think that's going to have a lot of attention? No, but what if Ashton Genty plays in a big game? Or Cam Ward plays at Louisville this week? Or Alabama plays at Tennessee? What if Milroe goes off? Those odds are going to continue to fluctuate. I'd, of course, rather have a national championship than a Heisman Trophy, but if you can have both, of course, that is phenomenal. But he put himself into that position because of how he played, the many ways in which he beat Ohio State, and the stage that he did it on, the team that he did it against, and that he was there every single time. And when Oregon needed a drive to get down and set up Atticus Sappington, going to talk about the kicking game more later, but shout out Atticus Sappington, once again, a game winner against Boise State as the clock expired, and then here against Ohio State to take the lead with under 2 minutes to go, and the defense comes up with a stop. That was big-time stuff from Dillon Gabriel. I don't know if he'll be in a bigger moment this year. I hope he's not. I hope Oregon just rolls their next 6 opponents and makes my prediction come to fruition that, I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it kind of did, makes it come true that Oregon goes 12-0. I hope that is the case. And that might not be a great thing for his Heisman candidacy. If Michigan's not any good by the time Oregon plays them, or if Washington keeps losing games, won't be as many eyeballs. And you might not have all the momentum. He certainly had it after Saturday with the way he played, but also Ashton Genty's really good. That guy. Oh, man, he is really, really good. But so too is Dillon Gabriel. I think that was the best version of Oregon's new quarterback, and I'll just put this final word on the quarterback situation. For all you fans out there, and I understand you, who would rather develop a high school kid and you can't keep taking transfers, kind of hard to argue with the results the last 3 years, right? Pretty hard. I'm not saying ignore high school quarterbacks, don't ever do that again, but pretty hard to argue with how Bo Nix and Dillon Gabriel have played the last 2.5 seasons. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. I have a lot of questions to answer. Lots of questions to answer, including, is this the best Oregon receiving core ever? It's coming up next. Hey, Locked On Duck fans, time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. And it's the guy I already mentioned, Dillon Gabriel. I mean, best game, I think, of his entire college career when you consider the caliber of opponent that he was going up against. So, this season, we've pooled over $10,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Oregon plays Wisconsin and Michigan in that month, by the way. Just download Roy, create an account, enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Roy, support the players, change the game. Good old second segment sip. Never lets me down. Dillon Gabriel didn't let us down. Do you want a question answered on the show? YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter, or if you want priority access and a bunch of other perks as well, go join the flock over at Subtext, link in the description below, and become a Locked On Ducks insider. You can get a free 14-day trial. Then it's just $5 a month. Dylan asks, is this the best wide receiver core in Oregon history? For sure, top 2 or 3. Stewart will likely have the best NFL career and absolutely embarrass the best secondary in college football by a mile. First round corner and best safety in college football in Denzel and Downs. That's Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs. So I think this receiving core is every bit as good as last year, because I watched Troy Franklin make a lot of big time plays and be wildly productive. And Stewart is not going to end with the same numbers that Franklin put up last year when he had over 1,400 yards and I think it was 14 touchdowns or so. Like, literally the best statistical season in the history of Oregon football. Evan Stewart isn't going to have that in all likelihood because there's this other guy named Tez Johnson. And when you have that as a two-headed monster, and when you have Trayshawn Holden as your number 3, and then he commits an immature penalty, and then he's ejected from the game, and you don't have a drop-off there, and Gary Bryant Jr., number 4 from a season ago, already isn't there. Yeah, I feel pretty confident saying this wide receiving core and last year's receiving core, I'll take either one. Best Oregon has ever had. The talent, the depth, it's crazy. And Saturday was the best individual game we've ever seen from Oregon wide receivers. I don't know what is even in second place. Where can you get the stakes of the Ohio State game, the caliber of secondary you're going up against, and the performance across the board? I mean, Ohio State, there were some coverage drops that the Buckeyes ran where they were trying to take away the short stuff in the middle of the field because they knew that Oregon, in all likelihood, at least I assume that's what Jim Knowles and company knew, that Oregon likes to throw the ball short and over the middle of the field. Well, Oregon then was able to make the adjustment, which is why I talked about Dillon Gabriel's deep balls to begin this show. And they said, okay, we'll take some shots on the outside if you're going to leave them one-on-one. And Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson, time and again, they found soft spots in the zone, they won their man-to-man situations, and they were competitive in 50-50 balls, and we just haven't seen that a lot from Oregon receivers over the years. Like, the touchdown that Evan Stewart had, that's just not something Oregon wideouts have historically done at a very high clip. And I think that they played the best game they could have possibly played. Shout out to Justice Lowe. Shout out to Justice Lowe. He was on the field a lot. I know a lot of people coming into the year thought that maybe Jurion Dickey would be the guy who would be in that particular position, have the opportunity to get more reps. Well, the staff clearly likes Justice Lowe more, and the receiving room talks very highly of him. Tez Johnson says that he's one of the best guys in the room. I think he said that after one of the fall camp practices in the media availability. And based on what we saw, like, Justice Lowe had a catch in a big spot, slipped a tackle, and picked up, 8 yards, 9 yards? I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but boy, every play matters in that game, and he had a 9-yard pickup. Like, being prepared for that moment, I think is phenomenal. And when you factor in that you've got Terrence Ferguson in the tight end position, and I definitely count him as part of the receiving corps because he's, a guy catching passes. T-Ferg's awesome. I've been the leader, I think, unofficially, of, I was recently appointed, once upon a time, in charge of the Terrence Ferguson fan club. going into the 2022 season. And he has done nothing but be really good over and over and over again. Oregon goes to him in key spots like the 4th and inches. Oregon goes to him on the game-winning field goal drive, where he catches that ball in traffic over the middle, slips a tackle, gets down the field. He looks more and more like somebody I'm going to pick on my fantasy team one day the more I watch him play football. So I think that for this receiving core, it's as good as I've seen. Like, give me one that's better. I am a Jeff Mail stan. He is still my favorite Oregon wide receiver of all time. I will put him up against any wideout that Oregon has roll through, including Franklin and Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson, and I love Jeff Mail. He's just kind of personally my favorite. There's a nostalgia factor, but this receiving core is crazy good. And I hyped him up coming into the year. And just like the defensive line, they've lived up to the hype. They have been there time and time again, and Saturday was their best performance yet. Dillon has a couple other questions. I'll get to those later in the week. But Bobby sent in a couple, and I told you, Bobby, I'd get to your questions today, and I appreciate you sending them in. A day later, many shades of playing Washington the past 2 years with none of the heartbreak, which is very nice, obviously. I agree. Winning, superior to losing. What do you think was the difference? The players on the field, Evan Stewart, or something else? Evan Stewart made a difference. Look, this is going to sound, I don't know if strange is the right word. I don't know if a cop-out is the right word, but there's an element of luck in these games. Luck, chance, 50-50, go either way. Lanning made mostly the same decisions. They missed an extra point. He chased it the next time. 4th and goal, down 6. He went for it and did not convert. In many ways, it was similar. The breaks just went Oregon's way. They made the right plays situationally down the stretch. Joel Klatt thinks, I have to talk about Joel Klatt in a sec. Joel Klatt said he thinks, but also cannot confirm, that Dan Lanning, with a brilliant strategic move to put a 12th guy on the field, use the clock, prevent the big play, maybe. I think there's an aspect of it. Like, the biggest thing I could attribute it to is Dan Lanning is a better head coach now than he was a season ago. But really, it's just, if you play enough games that are decided by three or fewer points, you're not going to win them all, and you're not going to lose them all. That's the way sports work. I don't care if it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever. That's the way it is. And I don't think there's a huge difference. Like, last year's Oregon team was really, really good. I think this year's secondary is better than last season. That might be a difference, but the receiving core on similar footing. Running backs, very good. Offensive line, very good. Quarterback, getting high-level play. I don't think there's some huge change. I think them's the breaks, essentially. Bobby also asked, love the swagger from the team. They had it before, but it is thriving post-game, obviously. I asked you about connection, but we saw it big time this game. Who do you think had the biggest impact on the swagger scale for this win? For me, Dillon Gabriel was the dude for this game. Easy to say as the QB, but if he laid it out, LEI''D. That's good. That's a nice little pun there. I can appreciate that. Jordan James. Jordan James, that guy's a tone setter, because he is what casual college football fans, I'll say, think a Big Ten running back is. He's more than just plow ahead, but you talk about a guy that sets the tone, and you can go at any of those offensive linemen up front, particularly Josh Connerly. I thought Poncho had an awesome game, aside from a couple of poor snaps, and Gabriel was able to corral one of those and end up making a big play out of it. But I thought that Jordan James, the way he ran the football early, I said on Friday's show, Dillon Gabriel is going to have to be good, because you can't be one-dimensional against this team. You're going to have some semblance of balance. And Jordan James, very early, was still slipping tackles. Doesn't matter that he went from Michigan State to Ohio State, or from UCLA to this Ohio State defense. He was still breaking arm tackles. He was still falling forward. He was still running guys over. Like, Jordan James is a force. Absolute beast. And a great, not a good, a great RB1. I've still got to get to kicking game questions. I got to call out Joel Klatt, who I like a lot, but he not Joel's finest moment on his most recent podcast, and some more individual standouts. All that is going to get jammed into one segment, I guess, coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Ducks is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, so why would you go anywhere else? I don't really know. Did you get Oregon plus 3.5? If you listened to my score prediction, you would have had that, and boom, they went outright. So, of course, they cover. Even if Atticus Appington missed that field goal, thank goodness he did not, then Oregon would have covered. And when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. So, I have just one more question for you. What are you waiting for? Go check out America's #1 sportsbook at FanDuel.com. All right, so I want to start with Joel Klatt, whose podcast I listen to all the time, who I think is a great voice, even though I don't always agree with his opinions, as I'm about to get to. I think he is a great voice, an advocate for the greatest sport on planet Earth, and that is college football. I love listening to him call games. He does a fantastic job. He's got a good show. Egregious oversight and just flat out error on his part. So he's talking about the Oregon-Ohio State game. I think he gave Oregon plenty of flowers, but when he was talking about Ohio State, he said that they got jarred by the officials. That wasn't the exact word he used, but he said he couldn't believe they called offensive pass interference. And it's the strangest thing if you go watch it on YouTube, because he's talking about, when I talk to officials, I hear them say that for offensive pass interference, you have to have clear extension from the wide receiver to create separation. I can't believe they made that. And then as he's saying that, the play is running on YouTube, and you can see Jeremiah Smith pushing off and sending Nico Reed in the other direction. So that's the first thing that I strongly object to. I was like, wait, we don't think that was offensive pass interference? Because if it's not, I'm not sure what is. I'm not sure how you can justify running forward, stiff-arming a guy, shoving him 3 yards in the other direction, turning around and catching the ball. It's clearly offensive pass interference. That's the first thing. The second thing, to then paint the picture, which he very clearly did because there was no mention of, that one, the one that popped into your head that I'll get to here in just a sec. He paints the picture of, Ohio State needed to play better to win the football game. They made mistakes, but they got screwed by the officials at the end. Makes no mention of the lack of review in the first quarter. Like, are you joking me? Joel, come on, man. Come on. You got a big platform. You got to do better than that. If you want to bring up both and say, even though I disagree, that shouldn't be OPI, that's fine. You can't just not even mention, hint at, or allude to a blatant, not subjective interpretation that should have gone Oregon's way, an objective fact that we can see on camera that the tight end never caught the ball and Jeffrey Bassa did. We can all see that happen. To not bring that up, it's the most annoyed I've ever been with Joel Klatt. I think he is an awesome guy. I've not had the chance to meet him before, but I know people who have. They say he's an awesome dude. I think he's great for the sport. That's an egregious mistake for a guy who has a massive platform. And he went on to criticize officiating in college football. No arguments here. None. I'm here for calling out officiating and holding them as accountable as we can for their actions and their calls. But to paint that picture when talking about the game as, Ohio State got screwed on this call, and then just not even mention the other one, egregiously bad. So that's that. Let's get to the kicking game. I got about half a dozen questions from you out there about the kicking game, what's going on, what's going to happen. So Andrew Boyle came in to kick an extra point. I actually missed this as I was watching the game, and a number of you brought it to my attention. He came to kick the extra point that came, I believe, after Sappington had missed the 44-yard field goal. So Andrew Boyle kicks, and again, shout out to the Oregon special teams for creating a disaster on the blown PAT, but then tackling the guy short. Won the game by 1 point. That was going to be 2 points for Ohio State. So just throwing that out there. But I don't have the exact answer on what's going on in the Oregon kicking game. I do like that there's clearly another option. Because when a guy is struggling, you'd like to not be pigeonholed into, well, we got to go then. There's nobody else that's ready. Here's the thing. I don't think Atticus Sappington is struggling that badly. Remember, he hit a game winner against Boise State, and then with less than 2 minutes to go, I know it's only a 19-yard field goal. That thing's at a 40. That ball was all the way on the hash mark pretty much. It might even have been all the way on the hash mark, and he drilled it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, do I know what's going on? No. Is Dan Lanning ever going to tell people? Probably not. I would expect Andrew Boyle hasn't attempted his last field goal or PAT this season. It could be a hot hand situation, like with running backs, where they say, yeah, Sappington missed, we want to put Boyle back out there. Could be. Or they're trying to figure out which guy is going to be more consistent. Or maybe Atticus Sappington got dinged up somewhere and wasn't able to go in and kick the extra point. There are a lot of different explanations. I don't feel incredible about Oregon's kicking game. I also don't feel like it's a complete and abject disaster at the moment from an individual kicker standpoint. Like, holy crap, we got to be able to get a better snap and get the hold down on an extra point. And then when that happens, don't throw it up over your head. Like, holy smokes, what are we doing? What are we doing? Can't have any of that stuff. And that was one of my keys going into the game against Ohio State was avoid special teams disasters, mishaps, miscues, and that almost came back to bite Oregon. It was that close to happening. So do I think the kicking game's in a great place? No. Is it in a terrible place? Also no, because I saw Andrew Boyle at a 50-yard field goal. It looked pretty good. And remember, the missed extra point was about the snap and the hold. To me, that's easier to fix than the kicker himself missing extra points. Now, Sappington's missed 2 this year. So should he have a firm grasp on the kicking job? No. But was I nervous watching him kick the field goal to take the lead? Yes, but that's because of the situation, not because I don't think he can make the kick. I don't know. Most likely explanation, he missed a 44-yarder, and he's already missed a couple extra points this year. And so Dan Lanning and Joe Lorig, the special teams coordinator, said, you know what, let's give him a kickoff, let him regroup. And they went back to him later, and clearly it worked out. So I agree there are things to clean up. I would like for that operation to look better. It is not a top concern for me right now, especially as Oregon enters a stretch of games where field goals shouldn't be all that important starting this week against Purdue, where they're about a 27.5-point favorite on the road. So finally, I'll wrap up with the individual standouts I didn't get to from yesterday's game. Terrence Ferguson as a blocker is phenomenal. I heard from, I don't know, I think someone sent me a question one time and said, well, T. Ferg's not much of a blocker. I don't know where you get that notion. Because every time I watch him, he's moving guys out of the way. He's good in pass protection. And when he gets downfield, go watch the Dillon Gabriel touchdown. T. Ferg's downfield, clearing the roadway. There should be a defensive back there, and T. Ferg blocks him out of the way. I am bullish on that guy, and he is incredibly, incredibly good. Kenyon Sadiq is going to have big shoes to fill next year in the passing game and in the rushing and blocking game. Nico Reed. I was actively worried about Nico Reed in one-on-one situations. Did he get beat a couple times? Yeah, that's what happens when you go up against NFL wide receivers. I think Nico Reed held his own. I do. He wasn't a lockdown, but no one's going to be against Emeka Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate, and Will Howard, a capable quarterback. Like, it's a tough thing to do, but there were plenty of 1v1 moments where you look up and you go, hey, Nico Reed held up in coverage. And I think that he didn't have, aside from the offensive pass interference, which was, again, clearly offensive pass interference, he didn't have, a big splash impact play, but there were several moments where I looked up and saw he's doing a pretty good job. Or at the very least, he's making it tough on the Ohio State wideout. So shout out Nico Reed. Roger Saliapaga, the true freshman, that recovered the onside kick that was half accidental, half not. They weren't trying to hit it off of the Ohio State up man. They knew it was a possibility, but Lanning said they were trying to, essentially squib it down and pin them deep in their own territory, and it worked out, and Roger Saliapaga is the guy that got on top of the football. He and Jaden Lamar, the two biggest fumble recoveries of the season, maybe of the last 5-10 years. Maybe the biggest fumble recoveries in Oregon football since Michael Clay in the 2012 Rose Bowl. Derek Harmon shouted him out yesterday, but did not get a chance to mention Amari Washington. This guy is really good. And this was one of the most curious things in an Oregon football sicko way, which is of course what I am, that I was curious to see coming into the season. Like, who's going to fill that void? Which of those true or redshirt freshmen are going to step up on the interior? Yeah, the answer is Amari Washington. Keon Ware-Hudson is in there. He's playing solid football. Amari Washington is making impact plays. He is so quick off the ball for a guy of his size. He hit Will Howard's arm on the final drive, that ball that fluttered in the air. I thought Tyshim Johnson was going to intercept it for a moment and seal the game. He generated pressure there. He was in the backfield before Derek Harmon when Harmon stripped Quinshon Judkins early in the game, which was a huge, huge momentum swing. Amari Washington is disruptive. And I mean, guys that big shouldn't be that quick. And he is a good contributing player that can make impact plays for Oregon now. Next season, I tell you what, early pick. I'll make this call right now. Amari Washington, 2025, all-conference Big Ten selection. That's what he looks like to me. He's a redshirt freshman, bright future ahead of him. He looks ready for the moment. It's not, he can hold his own, he can do this. No, he's beating veteran offensive linemen against Ohio State. He blew up a play in the backfield against UCLA. Like, he is disruptive. And Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoy, they've recruited that position really hard. And Amari Washington, right now, looks like the gem of that 2023 group of interior defensive linemen. Overall, it's Mateo. Because Mateo he lost a star before he came to Oregon. My question, why? That guy, 2025 will be the last year Mateo Uyunglele plays college football, barring an injury, because he's really good. Really, really good. But I want to shout out Amari Washington because he has been awesome. Thanks for making this your first listen. Go make Locked On College Football your second. I keep you posted with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth outside of Oregon, but every now and then including them too. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.